Lesson 14 has us continuing with long division, but we're now going to apply it to situations where we have decimals. So the objective of this lesson is that you'll be able to use the standard algorithm for division to solve for the quotient of multi-digit decimals, and that you understand how to use powers of 10 to move the decimal in the divisor and dividend, because we can't divide by a number that has a decimal in it if we're using the standard algorithm. Now, just as a reminder, the equivalent fraction, to create one, we multiply or divide the numerator and the denominator by the same number, which is what we'll be doing with the powers of 10. So that's a reminder of how you convert fractions to decimals, where you take your numerator divided by the denominator. We use the standard algorithm right here to solve that. Down here we have the first problem that we're going to do. So you have 3 43/100ths divided by 35 thousandths. You have to go to the divisor. So I have the divisor here, the dividend here, and the 5 is in the thousandths place. With it being in the thousandths place, that means that's what we have to multiply both of them by so that we can move the decimal over. So as a fraction, that would become 3 43/100ths over 35 thousandths. So now what I do is I have to create that equivalent fraction. So I multiply both by 1,000. When I do that, that moves my decimal 1, 2, 3 times, which means it turns into 3,430. So you see here it only had 2 numbers, so when I moved it a third time, I just put a 0 in place of it. This one, 1, 2, 3 times, becomes 35. Now, I move it 3 times because the place value here, the power of 10 has me move the decimal the number of zeros there are. So over here I have the division problem. On the left side is the multiplication table. I have 35 is 2 digits. I go to 2 digits. 34 is less than it, so I have to now go to 3. 343, if I look at my table, it can go into it 9 times. I'll subtract 315. When I subtract, I get 28. If I bring down the 0, that's 280. 280 is the 8, so my answer is 98. So your first step is to multiply by the power of 10 connected to the place value of the divisor. And then step 2, make the table, and then you're able to divide. Now, if you open your book up to lesson 14, as you start with a fraction. So the fraction is 1/2 divided by 10. If you invert and multiply, you have 1/2 times 10 over 1, and you get 10 divided by 2, which is equal to 5. Now, if I go over here, I'm doing the same thing, but now as decimals, because 5/10 is written like this, and this is 1/10. 5 and 10 both can be divided by 5, so I can create the equivalent fraction of 1/2, and this is being divided by the 1/10. So this is the exact same thing, but now we're going to do it as decimals. So we have 5/10 divided by 1/10. This here is in the tenths place. Because it's in the tenths place, I'm going to multiply both by 10. And again, this here is my divisor. And 10 means I move the decimal 1 place, this becomes a 1. 10 means I move the decimal 1 place, this becomes a 5. 5 divided by 1 is 5. Now, I did these 2 steps up here. So this is our decimals as a fraction, and this is them as whole numbers, and then that's the answer. Now, in the directions, it doesn't say that you have to find the answer, but because we're working on the long division, I am wanting you to follow all the steps to solve it so you can get the additional practice. So right here you see the first step. You have the dividend first, and then you have the divisor second. Okay, this is the one that we use to find what the place value is, or the power of 10 will multiply by. 3 is in the tenths place, so both are multiplied by 10. That 10 means the decimal moves once, so that's 186. 10, move it over once, it becomes 23. 186 divided by 23. And you multiplied the dividend and the divisor by 10, so that each decimal moved 1 place to the right because they grew larger by 10. So you're going to write this same sentence, It's just going to be by whatever number you multiply by rather than 10, because it's not 10 every time. So I have a 14 and 4/100 divided by 4 and 68/100. Again, I look at my divisor. My last number of the divisor is in my hundredths place, which means I'm going to multiply by 100. When I multiply them both by 100, that's 2 zeros, and so my decimal has to move over twice. That becomes 1,404. This one, there are 2 zeros. We move it over twice. That's 468. To do my division here, it's 1,404 divided by 468. If you look over here, I have my table already drawn for you. 1,404 is already in the table, which means my answer is 3. And that's 1,404. It's a 0. Now, you multiplied both by 100. So each decimal moved 2 places to the right because they grew larger by 100. There you go. That's all you have to write. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the next one. You're not going to have to do that for every single one. Looking up here, again, I already did the table for you. If you look, we have 162 thousandths divided by 36 thousandths. I go to my divisor, and my last number is in the thousandths place. And so that's a 162 thousandths divided by 36 thousandths. Because it's in the thousandths place, I have to multiply by 1,000. And because there are 3 zeros, this is going to move 3 times. That's 162 over, this moves 3 times, 36. If I do my long division here to solve it, it's 162 divided by 36. It goes into it 4 times. I get 144. I don't have any more decimals, and so what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to add a 0 after the decimal. 5 minus 4 is 1, 12 minus 4 is 8. I add my decimal, put a 0, bring it down, that's 180. If I go over here, 180, it's with a multiple of 5, so I put my 5, I bring that decimal up, so my answer is 4 and a half, or 4 5/10. And we multiplied both by 1,000. So the decimal moved to the right 3 places because both numbers grew by 1,000. All right, so we're going to go over here. And I'm going to give you example 2 because it's a little different here. So I have 25, so we have to put it as a fraction. 25 and 2/10 divided by 72 hundredths. I go to my divisor. The last number is in the hundredths place. So that means I multiply both by 100 so that my decimal can move 2 places to the right. When it moves 2 places to the right, it becomes a 72 as my denominator, and this moves 2 places to the right. It becomes 2,520. So I now have to put it into the algorithm. So 2,520 divided by 72. I need to create my table. So I have 72, 144 plus 72 is 216. And then we have 288. I can stop there because that gives me that first number. Because this is times 1, that's times 2, times 3, times 4. And don't forget, times 0 is 0. So if none of my numbers are big enough, or if all my numbers are too big, then I just put a 0 in place and then get the next value. So anyways, we have 252. The closest I can get is the times 3 here. So I have it times 3. I'm going to subtract my 216. I'm going to borrow there. And that's going to be 12 minus 6 is 6. 4 minus 1 is 3. Bring down your 0. I get 360. I'm going to add 72 over here again to get my times 5. That's 10. Carry my 1. 7 plus 1 is 8 plus 8 is 16. Carry my 1. That's 360, which is exactly the number. And so my answer is 35. Now, I would like you to go and do exercises 5 and 6. So you can pause right now and do 5 and 6. And then we're going to go on to example 3. Because I will check your 5 and 6. And then you will work on, you'll do the example 3. And then when you do the problem set, you're going to do the problems that match the example. All right, now that you've done your 5 and 6, we're going to go ahead and do this. I want you to remember back when we were doing unit rate, when we have to find a rate or the unit rate when it comes to distance and time, you take distance divided by time. Or if you write it as a fraction, it's distance over time equals rate. And that's what we're going to be doing with these word problems. So we have a plane that travels 3,625 and 2600 miles in 6 9/10 hours. What is the plane's unit rate? So represent the situation with the fraction. So distance divided by time or distance over time. So my distance is the numerator. And I'm going to write miles so that I don't forget. Over 6 9/10 hours. Now, next step. We have to represent them using the same units. And so I need to then look at what my powers of 10 would be. So that's 3,626 divided by 6 9/10. So my 9, the last number in the divisor, is in my tenths place, which means I'm going to take both times 10. And when I take them both times 10, my new equation, or my new equivalent fraction, this is 1, 0, so this moves at 1 to the right. So my denominator becomes 69. And my numerator, when I move this twice, is 36,252 and 6/10. So as you can see, the decimal, that's a comma, the decimal is still in the numerator, but that's okay. It only matters if the decimal is in the denominator. We can't have it there. So now, we're not going to do estimation. We're going to then solve it. So what we did right here is we represented this as a whole number, which is what it asked me to do right here. So that step is right there. This step is where you multiplied by the place value. Now I'm going to use the algorithm to solve it. So I'm going to take 36,252 and 6/10 divided by 69. Now, I need to have my multiples of 69 so that I can quickly solve this. So we have times 0 equals 0, times 1 equals 69, times 2 is 138, times 3 is 207, times 4 is 276, times 5 is 345, times 7 is 414, times 8 is 483, and times 9 is 552. So times 3, times 4, times 5, times 6, times 7, times 8. Oh, I lost count. So then times 9 would be 621. Now, you can go ahead and record that down so that you can then go along with me as we solve it. So this is 2 digits, so I'm going to start with 2 digits. That's 36. I can't because I have a 0. So you could write a 0 in here if you would like, and then we subtract 0 and we get 36 again. Bring down your 2, that's 360. So I look over here and I find a number as close to 360 as I can without going over. And right here it is 345, which is times 5. So we have a 5 there. That's 345. I borrow from the 6. This becomes a 10. 10 minus 5 is 5. 5 minus 4 is 1. I bring down my 5 now. I have 155. I look over here. What's the closest to 155 without going over? And that's a 138. And so my multiple is 2. So I'm going to put my 2 over the number that I brought down. So I want you to see how all of these are lined up. So I brought my 5 down to get the 155. And so then that's what told me I needed 138. Because it's the closest I can get, which was the 2. And so now I have to put this here. I do my subtraction. I have to borrow from the 5. That becomes a 15 minus 8 is 7. 4 minus 3 is 1. I have to bring down my 2. That's 172. I look over here. What's the closest to 172 that I can get without going over? And that's right here, the 2. My decimal goes straight up. I don't want to forget to put that there. And now I have to subtract my 138. I have to borrow. That becomes a 6. That's a 12. 12 minus 8 is 4. 6 minus 3 is 3. I bring down my 6. That's 346. It can go in there 5 times. And I put a 5 here. That's 345. When I subtract that, I get a 1. I can't do anything. Oh, I bring down a 0, and that's a 10. I can't do anything there, so I'm going to put a 0 here because that's the closest I can get to it. 69 times 0 is 0. And then it becomes a 100. And it can go in there once. We're going to stop here because you always want to stop in the hundreds place. Okay, so all I did was stop after this because then I would know whether I needed to round this up or not. And so then the plane's unit rate would be $522 and 50. And then here I have miles over hours. So remember miles over hours, which is the same as miles per hour when we have the decimal or the fraction like that. And so that's 522 miles per hour. All right, I want you to go ahead and go to your problem set after I check your 5 and 6. So at this point, I want you to bring up your 5 and 6 so that I can check it. And then I will move you on when you show you have mastered the skill.